Right. First one of these today. Just felt like I might buy Munich in it. No Harry Kane. Usual drill. Give it a couple of minutes. Give it a couple of minutes until maybe a minute for a few people to join, and then I'll get this on the road. But interesting. Joe, what? I'm just going to jump into it. Right. Hello. Welcome back. New season. Sort of, I think, new season of post-game podcasts. Is it? Should we put it that way? It's a Saturday afternoon. Just watch Spurs play midday. Do you know what I mean? Why not? Thought I'd do one of these. Dust it off a bit. Dust off the cobwebs. Dive in. Give you some hot takes on Tottenham Hotspur versus Bayern Munich. I'm probably not going to do the whole player by player breakdown. Not yet. Not in pre-season. Just kind of keep it to just general chat about this game and about Spurs. Right. Let's put it this way. It's a pre-season friendly. Can we just say up front, caveat everything that's said in this pod with, I fully acknowledge that this is a pre-season friendly, right? I get it. We're experimenting. We've played a few games in quick succession. The weather is very hot, very humid, as I understand. Players have been traveling around a lot. Then they're not at home base, living in hotels. I get all this kind of stuff, right? So I'm going to caveat everything with that up front. I totally understand that. It's considering it's our first, I would say today was our first proper test of pre-season. It was worryingly reminiscent of what we saw for probably, if I'm being kind, the final third of last season, if not pretty much half of last season, where we were pretty flat. Everything was pretty uninspiring. Play wasn't really ticking. Players weren't really finding each other that well. Didn't look like we had a proper focal point up top. Felt again like we just really, really struggled to retain possession in that final third. Like everything's rushed, everything's quite panicked. And I understand that part of this might be what Ange Postecoglou is instructing players to do. Often our attacks are very fluid. Often they're very instinctive. Often the ball zips about. And when it comes off, it looks very good and the goals are very nice. And I'm the sort of person that sat here saying, this is all very wonderful. This is all very great. We have looked okay in pre-season so far. We conceded a few more goals than I would have liked, really, let's be honest, against sort of the K-League 11. So defensively, we're probably looking a bit suspect still. I don't know. We've had a Euros, I get that. We've had a Copa America, I get that. It just can't help but be a little concerned. Like I did this. I'll read my tweet verbatim, right? What I put out when I was kind of not losing my ass because I don't think that's fair, but just when I was a little bit concerned at halftime from what I was watching, I just said, "It's not purple and gold." Entitled, an indication that you're not on board with our process or unhappy that we're signing promising young players. To be somewhat concerned by how slow - non-existent our summer business has been yet again. That's kind of just, I don't think that's that unfair a thing to say, is it? We have had over a decade, at least maybe 15 years of Spurs kind of behaving in this way over summer, of Spurs being really slow to get our business done. It did feel like the end of last season clearly showed that we needed additional signings. And it is great that we've signed the likes of Gray. We've got Bergvall in. We've got, well, we're promoting a lot of our younger players, bringing Lancashire through, bringing Moore through, bringing Hall through. Great, wonderful, but doesn't skirt over the fact that we need additional players. And I think days like today kind of show that. Um, the example is for me is Eze, and I think look, I've always been. I'll be honest. As soon as I sort of heard we were linked with Eze, I've been pretty much entirely on board with it. I've maybe had moments of thinking, do we need him? Is he the most important signing for us to make? Maybe we need a striker. And I do think we need a striker. That's like, to me, we definitely need a striker. We need somebody up front. We need a focal point. But after watching today, there's a big part of me that thinks Eze is actually pretty crucial to this system, or to at least hoping that Spurs can achieve something in this system, in this way that we're playing with the sort of players that we have. And I don't even think my hottest hot take on this is I don't even think it's a kind of him or Maddison thing. As has often been floated, I've said it myself, it seems to be pretty much the entirety of the discourse online is people saying, we shouldn't be buying Eze because that's going to put Maddison out of a job. Those two can't play together. I don't really agree with that. I think I can't profess to have watched Eze week in, week out at Crystal Palace, see what he does constantly. But the impression I get of Eze when I see him, when I have watched sort of the odd Palace game, if they're playing us or they're just the game that's on telly or whatever, whatever chance, sometimes when you do just tune into a random sort of game of Premier League football that isn't Spurs. I know some people don't do that, but I do every now and again. And you watch him, I kind of feel like he's the sort of player that he retains possession in the opposition half. He keeps the ball kind of moving. He's very creative. He can spot passes. He can spot sort of runners around him. He's good at holding on to the ball in an individual basis. I just feel like he's given Palace and he would give us an air of control in that sort of final third in the opposition half overall that I don't think we have right now. And I qualify the point that him and Maddison would work quite well together is because I think that Maddison, I have been probably a bit critical of him lately. And I think because somebody said to me on Twitter the other day, like, why do you suddenly hate Maddison so much? And I don't. I actually think I do think he's a very good player. Don't think he's amazing. And I'm pretty sure I've said that all along. I think he is capable of some amazing things. I don't know how much we've seen of that in a Spurs shirt. And he was very good. He was very good at the top end of last season when we first signed him. But like, I almost feel like he needs maybe somebody like, I don't know, it just feels like he would flourish in a team that has more control of the ball than it does. It feels like what we often ask Maddison to do is to do something like we would hope an Eze could do, right? Whereas I feel like Maddison is somebody that's quite an instinctive player. Everything he does is quite quick. The ball comes to him, he releases it, or he has a shot, or he kind of just goes on a sort of an instinctive little dribble when he suddenly puts those, his little sort of bursts, those sort of sprints that we see him go on, where he can suddenly just think, right, I've got some space, bang, and he runs into it and can maybe go around a couple of players. He feels like I say, just quite an instinctive player. And I think if he had the freedom to kind of play in that way a bit more, and I'm not saying that somebody like Eze is to be brought in to do like the donkey work alongside him or something like that. I just feel like the two of them could potentially work quite well together. How that looks like in a formational sense, I don't know. Like literally, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. But I just feel like in a sort of nebulous sense of like how it might work, I don't see it as being like it's either him or the other. And I really would like to see Eze be somebody that we bring in. And I don't think that's desperate. I think maybe bringing in somebody like Solanke it feels a bit desperate on the surface. And again, I know everyone says if that's who Ange Postecoglou wants, blah, but is it who he wants? I don't know. It feels a bit desperate. I don't think Eze is like oh, it's getting close to the season. Let's just get him. Like we've wanted him for a long time, right? We've, I think we've been bringing his mum to games or something last year. I don't know how much of an urban legend that is or not, to be truthful with you, but yeah, as people say, we've been courting him for a while, haven't we? And I think we could do a lot worse than bringing him in. Strikers wise, I don't know. Everyone's sort of losing their arse today because West Ham have brought in Fulkrug. Did you see him in the Euros? Honestly, I'm not worried about that one. I mean, he's definitely. I know he's definitely going to score against Tottenham, right? That's definitely happening, like this year. But come on, Hacker BLCPS. Hello, mate. Bayern look good with company, to be quite honest. Better than under Tuchel. Yeah, I'll up front with this. Like, I quite wanted company at Spurs. He had he had a bit of a horror show in the Premier League with Burnley, but I think people forgot way too quickly quite how good his Burnley side in the Championship were. And I know it's a Championship, but quite how quickly he took to management, quite how clearly he implemented a plan, a way of playing football, a style that was attractive and successful that a team like Burnley hadn't done for years playing under somebody like Dyche. He turned Burnley around very, very quickly. So when Bayern did bring company in, and everyone was kind of laughing at it a bit, I was sort of wondering, really. I don't know about that one because it does feel like company's got the personality for high level management, and he's definitely. I think like with most, I'm not going to say footballers are simple because I think most of us are simple in the respect that if you see somebody who's been successful in your field telling you how to do something, you're probably more likely to listen to them. It's probably why classically, look, managers like AVB have who maybe have perfectly good ideas of how to run football have often run into issues around man management. I mean, that was primarily at Chelsea, wasn't it? But still, some of these younger lads who we've seen it even with Nagelsmann to a degree, can we say? It feels like Bayern was a bit of a kind of mess all over the shop, really, to be honest. So I don't know how much of it you can blame on sort of Nagelsmann being young or anything like that. But I don't know. It feels a little bit like Company is somebody that got written off sort of quite unfairly because he was trying to be successful with Bayern Munich in the Premier League. But Bayern looked decent today. They knocked the ball about quite well. But anyway, I don't care about Company or Bayern Munich. What else have we got in here? Oh, mate. So he's also saying to me that he'd like McTominay out of the choices. I'm not, mate. No, I mean I'm not that fond of the idea of Conor Gallagher, to be honest, and I don't think he's fond of us. Conor Gallagher's proper Chelsea. I don't think he wants to come to Tottenham. And I think that's part of the problem. Yeah, they're doing all this kind of like banning him from the training ground and all this sort of thing now. I don't think that's got anything to do with anything other than them trying to bully him out of the club because they need to raise money for a FFP and all that sort of thing, don't they? Idris says, all these new events being held and great financial returns, but when is the penny going to drop? Every year we keep on hearing next summer is going to be huge, but it never happens. What about the present? I mean, I don't disagree with you, mate. I don't. You know, I felt pretty annoyed last year when I think it was Levy was on Bloomberg and he said something to the effect of, this isn't verbatim, but he said something to the effect of, when he was asked about Tottenham and their ambitions and everything, he was saying, well, to continue to compete at the very top, we need additional investment from the outside. And I just thought, we built this stadium. This is what this was supposed to be about. We built this stadium, non-match day revenue coming in, huge match day revenue coming in as well. We're still kind of hearing this same old bollocks. There's still some other reason as to why we're not gonna. And look, people do, and this is what I find disingenuous. This is the thing. This is the kind of this feeds into the purple and gold narratives and all this type of thing. The sort of discourse I find quite disingenuous is when people that, and I know people just want to find the positives, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when people are kind of like, what do you mean? We do spend money. We do. We've got a our squad size. Man, I don't want to hear it. Like, we're one of the richest clubs on the face of the planet. We print money. Like, Spurs can be ballsier than they are in the transfer market. They just can. They just can. I'm sorry, it's just how it works. I don't have an economics degree. I don't even really understand it. But what I do know is that Spurs can be ballsier than they are in the transfer market. That we still operate on this kind of level of frugality that I think is beneath us now, beneath a club of like the stature of what we aspire to be. And, you still can't help but wonder if those that look, the thing is, these conversations get mucky, right? These conversations get proper murky way too soon, right? Because there's such a kind of there's a real dodgy bleeding line here where it goes from you saying that the people that run the club don't run the club with footballing success primarily in mind, and then it runs into that sort of anti-Semitic, they're tight, they don't want to put their hands in their pockets type stuff. I think we've got to be careful how you approach these conversations. I think we always have to be, in most conversations in general, we need to be mindful of our words and of our actions. If 2024 thus far has taught us anything, but I have often questioned, like, it's funny because I will often, in a footballing sense, be accused of being like this centrist dar, where pretty much I will have, and this is more from Twitter, like people who are very, very ENIC out saying that some sort of club shill or whatever in the pocket of Daniel Levy. And then on the flip side, a lot of people who are very, very, very kind of like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Let's just spend 10 mil every window as long as, my favorite kind of tactics bloggers, no shade, have said these players are good. Then that's all that matters. And if you're a simpleton, if you just want to sign players for 100 mil or whatever. See, because both sides of these sort of arguments neglect so much that that is in between. Some of the nuance to this is that Daniel Levy and ENIC have done a grand job of turning Tottenham Hotspur from a a historic institution, a club that has had untold success in the past, been absolutely brilliant, but in the Premier League era were a middling club in decline. They were in decline, and have turned them into a club with a global footprint now, have turned them into a club that can attract a huge caliber of player, that has turned them into a club that is a pretty consistent and regular Champions League competitor, right? Has gotten them to a Champions League final. So I can understand that. However, I can also say on the flip side that a lot of this has come from Spurs managing this pretty well, from Spurs kind of having an idea of how we want to approach things, of consistently spending to a degree, but always pretty much. And I think this is the main thing with ENIC, right? The main thing with ENIC is this is our very closed box. This is how we want to operate. I mean, this works more for the people watching it on video, but I'm just drawing a little box with my fingers. We have a closed box of how we want to operate. We want to spend within these means. We don't want to be giving players huge contracts because that causes problems if they get injured or whatever, they fall out of favor, and then we can't get rid of somebody who's sat there on 200, 300 grand a week, blah, 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 blah. Those type of arguments. So what we want to do is we want to build self-sufficient, self-reliant systems where we mainly sign lots of young players who will either go on and be superstars that we can sell for massive profits, or who can hopefully, before they want to leave us, take Spurs on to be successful. And if not, we haven't spent that much in the grand scheme of things, and their salaries aren't absolutely enormous, right? And what always comes into this with Spurs ultimately is a sense of hope, a sense of there has to be an element of luck here. Under Pochettino, we almost had that. It almost completely vindicated the ENIC approach, which is we have we've invested money into our academies, we've invested money into our youth teams. We have put some money into the first team, although notably we didn't for many, many years. We were building a stadium at the time, despite us saying that we had ring fence transfer, but let's not go into that one again. But it's when it doesn't come to fruition, right? What Arsenal are doing now, and people always say, well, you can't compare this because Arteta's been doing a process for however many years now. They backed Arteta from day one. And also, Spurs haven't just started on this process with Ange Postecoglou. This has been a constant cycle with Tottenham Hotspur Football Club for a long time now. That ultimately, if there was, if ENIC were completely, let's be honest, if ENIC were completely invested in footballing success, completely invested in footballing success, in thinking like this is actually what is of paramount importance to us because we're desperate to see this. We're desperate to see Tottenham win the Premier League or the Champions League or something like that. That after the 16-17 season, despite the fact we were building a stadium, a club with the assets, the size of Tottenham, the scalability, the amount of money that would have been available to Tottenham, they could have taken a hit and thought, bang, here you go, Maurizio. Here's 100 mil. Here's 100 mil, 150 million. Get who you want, who you think you can add to this team that's just finished second, that's just been unbeaten at home. Add who you want. Add maybe that superstar signing to this team that is going to convince a Kyle Walker to stay, that is going to convince a Danny Rose, who is brilliant at this point, not to go to the Sun and start complaining about the lack of ambition from the squad, right? That is going to give everybody at the club a bit of a lift, right? Get that superstar in or a couple of superstars in, and let's take this second place finish and win the league next year. Let's do it. Let's actually do it. But they don't. They don't. And that's part of the issue, right? So, and I think people are well within their rights to complain about that type of thing because everything about Tottenham is very expensive. You want to go to Spurs, you pay as much more than people who pay for Manchester City, who regularly win things, who go to Chelsea, who regularly win things. We're pretty much, it's us and Arsenal at the very top of this. And Arsenal now are showing a clear commitment to trying to win the league. They really are doing that. They are pumping money into Arteta, into this Arteta project. 100 mil, Declan Rice, bang, do it. Do it. Kai Havertz, everyone thinks he's crap. You want him, 65 mil, bang, do it. Go and get it done. They're probably going to bring in somebody else this summer, you'd imagine. I still wouldn't be surprised if they brought in a Tony or somebody like that. I don't know. But there is a difference there. And with Spurs, it doesn't mean it's all bad. It doesn't mean like I'm not trying to sound like negative about this because I like the process. I like what Spurs are doing. I like the fact that we have this manager in Ange Postecoglou who's progressive, wants to play a certain style, wants to play a certain way of football. You could say that the club have backed him to a degree by letting him kind of bin off Ndombele, letting him bin off Brian Hill. Some of these players that, well, I mean, we still haven't gotten rid of Brian Hill. He's just on loan again. But you know what I mean? Like, starting to clear things out, starting to bring in some new players. You know, we have brought in Romero, we have brought in Van der Ven, we have brought in a new goalkeeper. You know, Lloris has finally gone. So I get it. There is seeds of change, and it doesn't mean I'm not fully bought into that. However, can they not honestly, really, please, like, see how draining it is every single summer for the fan base, for the image of the club, for probably the players, for everybody involved around the club, to be going into every single season still waiting for a signing, for like a significant signing at least. And look, I know people say, oh, people just want new things. You're just being simple. You're just being bait. It's not. Football is a basic game. Life is pretty simple, right? Big new shiny things give people a lift. It doesn't mean that's all you want. It doesn't mean that the signings of like Gray, Bergvall, the continued kind of look at nurturing an environment where somebody like Moore can come in, where Devine can come in, where Lancashire can come in, where Hall can come in. That's all really good. That's great. Those things are all great. And I'm not saying it's one or the other. I'm not saying get Mbappe, get, Vinicius Jr. in. I'm not sitting here ranting and raving about that. What I'm saying is like, just starts to show a bit of ambition, start to show that like you actually want to go into a season. Like, how great would it be? How great would it be if for just once we could be going into a season where the chairman, the manager, the players are all like, our aim is we're going to win the league and we think we can. We're adding to this team because that's what we've got our sights set on. It's just always caveated. And Ange came into this when we first signed him. He came into this reading from that hymn sheet. He came into this saying, I want to win the league here. I want to do all this stuff. And I find it quite disheartening that just this week, he's now already in this arc of, well, it's not going to be done overnight. And I'm not saying he's doing anything wrong. I'm saying he's probably again now coming to terms with what the environment at Tottenham is like, what the constraints of managing Tottenham Hotspur Football Club are, how it works, right? He's seen how the sausage is made, and he's kind of, I don't know, is he adjusting his gaze? Is he refocusing what he thinks is possible, what he thinks is potentially achievable at Spurs? I don't know, but it didn't. It just felt a little bit flat. Felt a bit disheartening to hear Ange be like, "Yeah, well, I don't think we're going to be in a place to kind of do it, but I don't really want overnight success. This is all kind of a, I don't know, this sort of." I don't want to say mealy mouth because I don't think Ange is a mealy mouth guy. I think Ange wears his heart on his sleeve, and I think it would be unfair, do him a disservice to do that. But it almost felt like he was feeling a little defeated in a way. And again, like I say, that doesn't mean I think Spurs are dreadful. It doesn't mean I think we're awful. I still want to see us try and challenge for the League Cup, the FA Cup, the Europa League this year. But what I'm saying is that kind of the highs we had a few years back of like Spurs could do anything. The world is our oyster now. It just doesn't feel that way. And it is a readjustment, right? It's a readjustment to the idea of where Spurs are now. And part of the other, as I always go on about Venn diagrams, another part of the Venn diagram of sort of disappointment here, one of the overlaps, is the feeling that we could be doing this more quickly. We could be speeding this process up a bit because we have the means to do so now. We have the infrastructure to do so. The club come out and they brag about record profits and they brag about the amount of non-match day revenue streams when it's business publications, when it's things like that, when the people that run the club want to pat themselves on the back and say, look at what a good job we've done. Look at how we've turned this kind of middling Premier League side into this global behemoth that prints money now. But then when it comes to like fan expectations, the fans kind of thinking, well, hang on, we're a football club first and foremost. To dare is to do, all that stuff, right? The Roger Lloyd pack montages and things like that you put on in the stadium, right? The game is about glory, all these things that you stitch into all this lovely merchandise that you sell us at £100 a t-shirt, right? All that stuff, suddenly, when we suddenly want a little bit of this back, a little bit of this thing that we've all helped build over the past tens of years, then we're told, well, we need to scale back our expectations. We need to be realistic. And it's frustrating. Look, hopefully prior to the season, we're going to be reveling in the fact that we've signed Eze, we've signed a striker, and maybe more defensive cover or another sort of sitting midfielder or something like that. And then you can point at this video and say, look how silly you were. You lost your ass because we lost a preseason game to Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich, who are one of the greatest sides in European footballing history, right? I get all that. But this isn't just off the back of this one thing. It's a summer, isn't it, of just concern. But there's plenty of, there's plenty of reason to be cheerful still. Like I said, going into this season, Mikey Moore looks great. Lucas Bergvall looks unbelievable. Archie Gray, not very good today, but still wonderful young player. Looks very, very talented. Vicario, big old, lost his ass today for the first goal, but made some wonderful saves after that. Looked pretty much solid as a rock. I mean, I know he did concede another one, but still. No, I don't think he did. I don't think he conceded, actually. Did he, the second one? No, I can't remember. There's plenty of reason to be cheerful. There is. We got some great players. Just there's still frustrations there, right? Demonstrates says, let's have a look. Demonstrates says, please someone explain to me what Brennan Johnson does on a pitch outside of making unmarked back post runs. Horrendous player. I think that's a bit unfair, isn't it? Each to their own. I know we've all got our opinions. I'll be honest. I'm not as kind of high on Brennan Johnson as I think a lot of people are, but nor do I think he's terrible. Really good first season for Spurs. His stats were good. I can't remember exactly what it was, but a number of goals, good number of assists. Part of it is because he came for so much money, right? He was an expensive player, but he's still young and he's still learning on the job. He's learning for this system, and it seems to be that he's a player that we've seen we really want for this system. So I don't think we need to sort of dive on him. I think he's okay. PTM Production says Füllkrug is a proper centre forward. I mean, he was horrible in the Euros, I thought, mate. I don't know. I'm not that. I don't know. I'm not that bothered about that. What's the point, FC? Absolute rubbish. We're going to finish 7th this season. I don't know where we'll finish this year. We'll wait and see, won't we? Jack Law. An old face, known Jack for many, many years. If Ange has any bollocks, he starts Bergvall over Sarr and Bisson Mikey Moore over Johnson first game of the season. I don't know. I really like Sarr. Bergvall looks really good, doesn't he? I'm going to be interested to see how he does with the physicality of the Premier League. I think in that K-League game, I thought there were a few times. Honestly, I don't have timestamps or anything, but just when I was watching, just anecdotally, I thought there were a few times when people got up in his face, and he suddenly looked like a 18, 19-year-old, fairly slight lad. I don't think he's that slight, actually. I don't think that's fair. I think he's quite stocky, but I think suddenly he looked like a young guy who's not that experienced yet. He sort of looked a bit rattled, just a little bit. And I do wonder how that will translate to the Premier League, but I think he looks incredible, doesn't he? There's flashes, and I know no pressure on the lad and all that sort of thing. There's flashes of Luka Modric about him. There really is. The way he kind of sprays the ball about, the way he glides around on the pitch. You can easily see him in 6-7 years, hopefully after he's won the lot of Tottenham, playing at Real Madrid, can't you? He's sort of got that aura about him. I do really like him. Mikey Moore, I don't know if I want to start him. He's a bit young, isn't he? He's great, and I definitely want to see him around the first team fold. League Cup, maybe some Europa League games, and making some appearances in the Premier League as well. But I don't know from the top, but you mean Lamar? He's done all right, hasn't he? I mean, I know one of the most exceptional footballers in world football, being 16 or now 17, but coming into the fold when he was 16, isn't just like a carryover for all 16-year-old players. Whoa, you mean Lamar's playing? So chuck him in. But Mikey Moore does look special, doesn't he? He does look absolutely special. Mwaka Emmy says, how come our young stars are better at Ange Ball? It's a good point. Maybe they're less entrenched in the way that they do things. Do you know what I mean? All of us, I'm sure players do, but as humans do, as we get older, we just get more entrenched in our own internal processes, don't we? This is how you do this. This is how you think about this. This is how you approach this type of situation. It's not to say closed-minded, but I just think you're juggling so much, right? You want to make things as easy as you can. And I think when you're also a bit defeated by past kind of failures or whatever, right? Whereas I think younger people, younger, fresher bloods, sometimes will approach things with, some might call it naivety, but also others might say kind of a sense of like optimism as well. An idea that there's something new to be built and let's go along with this guy. I don't know, maybe they're just more open to it. Maybe it's because it's more physically demanding. Maybe their fitness levels are different. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know. I'm probably the wrong person to ask on this. Brian Gibson says, we clearly need at least 3 quality players and the young lads need to start the season. Definitely agree. I reckon it's at least 3 good signings who, not even debatably, quite clearly improve the first team squad. And that doesn't mean the starting 11, but I'm talking the first team squad gives us a lift. I think there are some players, I think probably at least 2 of those need to improve the first team 11, for starting 11. But yeah, I think 3 signings, striker, somebody in that final third, and somebody, basically a midfielder that can retain possession, somebody that can be a focal point up the top, and maybe either another midfielder or another sort of defensive option, whoever that would be. I don't know. Quaizid says, completely agree, love the pod. Thank you, mate. I don't know what part you completely agree with, so I'll just take it you completely agree with everything I say. Great, thank you. Stephen Lynn says, what is our first team after today? Food for thought. That's good. Do you know what? I think you've given me food for thought in that. Maybe I'll just do another video for that, not live, not on the spot. I'll get somebody in and we can sort of go through and see what we think after sort of, pre-season, everything's going, how we shine up the season. Jay Ashraf says this is a style of play with 0 adaptability. I don't know. I don't know if I agree. I don't know if I agree with that one, mate. I'm not 100%. No, you mean, because I think, but I kind of think you can say that of any team, right? All managers have a set way of playing, a style of play, which will sort of be the undertone to everything that a team does. But I would say there's more room for maneuver in this. I think there's more responsibility given to individuals in this system to do something of note, a flair kind of move or whatever, like a Maddison or a Kulusevski, than there was under Conte, which felt like a very prescribed way of playing football. Trying to see. Nakalini 17. Spurs this season will be mid-table. He's got a profile picture of Garnacho, so I wonder if he's a Manchester United fan, which I don't know. Brad, not saying Bergvall is even ready yet, but surely you'd start him over Maddis from what we've been seeing. I mean, I definitely know what you mean. Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? I feel like this is one of those kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't situations with the young players and a lot of the kind of older heads, the likes of James Maddison and everything, right? In that What are you? I mean, if Ange drops Madison, brings in a sort of a young player like Bergvall, and Bergvall sort of just looks quite out of his depth at first, at least in the Premier League. Spurs don't get off to a good start, then people say, "What the hell was he doing? Dropping James Maddison, proven player. Yeah, he didn't play that well last year towards the end of the season, but come on, what are you doing, Ange? Sort it out." But then if he doesn't, and James Maddison starts the season much like the way he ended last season, then everyone say, "How did you not play this kid that was tearing it up in pre-season and everything?" So, it's kind of like the Lucas Moura, Harry Kane thing in the Champions League final again, isn't it? Where there's a clearly sort of divided line in what's going to be, the way in which a sort of a narrative is going to change or be twisted or whatever. So I just think it's difficult, isn't it? I think it's difficult. Um, but I don't really know. I don't really know. Let's have a look. I mean, well, Nationalini17 says Daniel Levy is a problem for Spurs. You haven't improved your squad. He says this is guy with the Garnacho profile picture. So I'm guessing he's not a Spurs fan. But, he's saying from the outside that we haven't improved our squad. And I think kind of match day squad, maybe, yeah. But I think everything has gotten maybe a bit of a lift. I don't know. I just think maybe the starting this Occam's razor starting 11 has not improved. It hasn't. I think we can say that as it stands in terms of at least in experienced quality. I'm just going to have a look through just a quick whiz through of the players. I don't want to do the players properly like I did, like I will when the season starts and everything like that. But because I do think there are a couple of there were sort of high points in this. Vicario, like I say, had a bit of a horror show for the first goal, but I think he was a good player. Pedro Porro, lovely, lovely finish. He's got that in his locker. Dragosin, whatever, he's coming up to speed. Let's just Ben Davis, steady Eddie, isn't it? Jed Spence, I'm still fully on board with this redemption arc. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. I thought he was really good again today. Let's find Ange's quote. Ange had a really good quote on Jed Spence, actually. It was really, really nice. Where is it? Where is it? Well, he said there's this thing. I think with Jed, for me, we got him back into pre-season. We're judging him on his merits. He's a Tottenham player. To be fair to him, I think he's been very, very good for us this pre-season in terms of the way he's trained, his general attitude. But there was a further comment from that. Where is it? He said something to the effect of that he's been impressing not only Ange himself, but he's been impressing other coaches. He's kind of looks like he's here. You go. He's impressed all the coaches, not just myself. For some of them, it's the first time they've worked with him, and they've all been really impressed. Maybe he's learned a couple of things over the last couple of years about himself, and hopefully we're going to bear the fruit of that. I mean, that is promising. That is something that's good because it's people love to sort of beat up the whole like a new signing thing, but Jed Spence looked massively promising when we brought him in at first. Massively promising. It was an exciting signing. It was. And if we can tap back into that, if we can get some of that energy, because he looks like a player that's built for this Ange Postecoglou system as well. Gets up and down the field. He's aggressive. He's quick. He's strong. Like physically, he's massive, Like he's a big, rangy guy. He's ballsy. He's got that type of energy that I think Ange Postecoglou will want. If we can harness that, if we can actually see the best of him, then great, because that means we've got options for Porro, for a doggy. It's because he is versatile. He seems to be able to play across the back. So I think that's exciting. That's a promising thing. Gray, yeah, he didn't have his best game today, did he? And everything. And Kulusevski, I think the Kulusevski centre forward thing that we're all getting a bit excited about. I love Decky. I love him playing centrally. I think he's a great, great player. But I don't really like this whole, can we maybe play him as a striker and not buy a striker? Not really here for that chat, to be honest. Someone else that came on, Donnelly, decent, good pre-season, hasn't he? He was sort of talking, I think he spoke to Alistair Gold this summer about playing back, left back and everything like that, just doing what the manager tells him to do. And it's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting to see sort of how that goes. But I don't know. There's plenty of time. Like I say, there's another week to go to transfer. Not another week to go to the transfer window, but there's a few weeks to go until the season starts. A couple of weeks, I think. Was it 19th of August? I think the season starts against Leicester. So a bit of time to bring some players in. Let's do it now. Do you know what I mean? We need to address that. But anyway, thank you for tuning in today. If you watch live, thank you for listening. If you are watching live, please drop a like, subscribe, put on the notifications, all that type of thing. If you are listening to the pod, wherever you listen to your podcasts, please leave a rating, please leave a review, please share the podcast wherever you share stuff. Even if it's with a mate or you make a new friend in a new job or something and they're a Spurs fan, say, listen to this, Mel. Get the word back out that I can't remember, the old Stringer Bell quote from The Wire. I've ruined it right at the end, haven't I? So yeah, share the pods, build the hype, be my hype people going into this season, please. And get more people listening so my ego can be further validated. Thank you. Do also have a Patreon, patreon.com/RTRpod. Be a lot of stuff going on to that this season. I've done a summer worth of content called A Stitch in Time, which is kind of nice nostalgia fests, going back, visiting old Spurs shirts and talking about the seasons that we wore them, how we played, everything like that. Loads of good guests on that. Loads of really good conversations on that. So tune in, have a listen to that. We've got the Spurs Day Thursday pod where I go through all the week's talking points with Phil. Been a bit slow on that, but it's just been quite busy and everything, and summer is summer. But yeah, like I say, drop it a like, drop a subscribe, patreon.com/RTRpod. Much love to everybody. Do another one of these in a few days' time.